13 years ago, June 27th, my son, 24 years old, walked into a gun shop in Rockland and bought a handgun and some bullets, 22 caliber, used one and shot himself in the heart. And I lost one of the loves of my life. And that pain has stayed with me all that time, which I'm sure is no surprise. So when that bullet went through Joel's heart, that's his name, um, it went through mine too, in a sense. Apparently, you can walk into a gun shop under Maine law and fill out on your own say so a form that says you're not prevented from owning one for any reason, felony or mental health problems. So essentially, he didn't tell the truth on the form that he signed, which I don't hold against him. He had mental illness. And so there really is no background check. He just walked in and bought the gun, and within hours, he was dead.
Hi, and welcome to Maine Challenge. I am very excited this week to have two people who work with the Maine Gun Safety Coalition and also who are good friends of mine. I am very happy to have Cam Shannon, who is the chair of the Maine Gun Safety Coalition, and Nicole Palmer, who is the head of their action network. And Nicole, tell me the right name of it.
It is the Show Up Network, or SUN, for gun safety.
Great, show up. And that's what these two women have been doing forever, in lots of ways, and particularly around this issue. And we start today with pretty sobering facts, right? The sobering facts are that we are seeing mass shootings on a regular basis. As we film this, there was just a shooting this week in Tennessee, and it barely made the news in a school. We see, a police officer who can't determine between a taser, apparently, and a gun shooting someone, and we see suicide by gun violence up. We see the number of arms and guns being sold since the pandemic has skyrocketed. And we see people, I know for me, people in my network, when the insurrection happened, people who I would never ever would think about even owning a gun start talking about it. And so I think we see at the same time the support for an automatic weapons ban and for common gun safety measures has never been here. And yet we can't make Congress on the federal level or the legislature here in Augusta take any action on this. So we got lots to unpack here. There's a lot of gun safety legislation before the legislature this session. So we're going to talk about that. But first, let me just ask you, first of all, thank you again both so much for being here. We're really grateful. And welcome to Maine Challenge. So Cam, let me ask you a little bit. I know you're active in so many things, and I know you're a mom of three beautiful children. And so why this issue? I know you care about a lot of things. What has inspired you to give so much time and effort to this issue, to the issue of gun safety?
Well, in the beginning, it was because I found myself listening to NPR with little people playing at my feet and racing to turn it off whenever the issue of gun violence came up. I just felt it seemed so scary and too close to their world. The fact that this was happening in schools. And then Sandy Hook happened the year before my oldest daughter started kindergarten. And so for me, that was an incredible loss that we felt as a country. And then I remember walking into her school, this my little treasured, she was 4 when she started, 4-year-old, seeing her in a gym with all these other beautiful little people and feeling anew the tragedy of what had happened. From then on, it's not only been about saving lives and saving young lives, but all of our lives, protecting lives. It's also about what it means to live in a country where this is happening. And I think for me, it's often my thoughts about young people, what it means for them to enter schools feeling afraid, to practice active shooter drills and lockdowns in their schools. It just seems like a burden that they shouldn't have to carry. And I am motivated by my desire to live in a country and a society where we are prioritizing our youngest and most vulnerable and creating a world where they're able to thrive, free from fear.
Wow. Yeah. And Nicole, I know you too are a mom to a new little guy and three other stepchildren. And so, but tell me, what inspired you? What inspires you what inspires you to start and to keep going?
I also was really affected by the Sandy Hook shooting.
Mhm.
And that was a real turning point for me. I think before that happened, I thought of gun violence as something like a horrible thing that happened to other people in really faraway places. It didn't seem like it was something that would ever be able to affect my life. And then I happened to be living in Connecticut when Sandy Hook happened. And then three of the children who were killed were 1 degree of separation away from me. And I realized that it was something that it could affect any one of us at any time. And that even when people lived in a community that they considered safe, they were not, in fact, safe from gun violence. And, you know, like Cam said, the shootings at Sandy Hook were a national tragedy. And I think everyone in the country felt it really deeply. But for me, it was a moment when I realized that if I wasn't actively trying to help fix this problem that we have, this huge, I see it as like a cancer in our society, that I was part of the problem and I needed to be part of the solution because our children should not have to face this every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just that idea of that sort of bedrock of safety, you know, that we have. So I just want to jump right in about why we're not getting very far. You know, here we have, you know, and it's really a conundrum, right? We've got, you know, I'm guessing and these numbers, but I would say we've got, you know, 10-15% of the population that is, you know, Second Amendment rights, guns no matter what, free for everybody, whatever. And then we've got probably that same percentage on the other side that would like to get rid of all guns. And then I think there's the huge group in the middle that wants to be safe, wants their children to be safe, wants all children to be safe, all people to be safe. And yet, and then and polls show this, I'm sure you can tell me, but the polls show that, you know, 80-90% of people support reasonable gun safety measures. And yet we can't seem to make any progress or very little progress in this country. Not true in other countries, but in this country. So I know you think about this all the time. Why can't we move this ball forward? Cam, ideas?
Well, I think that some of it is the legacy of the NRA and that this was a hot button issue for so long. And unfortunately, I think that our lawmakers, not all of them, but some of them are taking a longer time to catch up than our population. So just as you say, there is broad support for gun safety measures. And I think we're starting to see our movement rise and we're starting to see the NRA fall. So the truth is, I feel hopeful. We now see lawmakers running on gun violence, not away from it. I'm hopeful that this will change. There's still some impediments. We have Biden taking a strong lead. But I think that on a state level, before I go off on a tangent, I think at a state level, part of what we need, and we haven't had as much as I would like, is leadership from Governor Mills. We've seen that she does care about gun safety and keeping people safe. But in states where we've seen more progress, similar states like Vermont, it was really the leadership of the governor who said, this is important, lives are on the line, and stuck their neck out. And so that's some of what we are hoping to see more of from her.
Yeah. And Nicole, I know you've organized people to come and testify and go to the State House and, be involved in Zoom right now. And so, and often that testimony is like incredibly compelling and the information, like I feel like facts are on our side, figures are on the side of gun safety, people are on our side. Where do you see the impediment, like on the ground?
Um, I don't think we can point to just one thing.
Yeah.
I really appreciate, Cam, that you brought up the governor. Um, Governor Mills has, while when she was running for office, she said that she supported, for example, a red flag bill. But when it came time to actually pass a red flag bill, she made clear that she was not, she made clear to other um, legislators that she was not going to vote for it, that there was no way she was going to vote for it. And that puts legislators in the position of feeling like, well, there's no point for me to vote for this bill because it would be vetoed when it gets to the governor's desk. So that's one really big impediment. But also the NRA and their subsidiary groups here in Maine are very well organized, and they show up in really large numbers at the State House when it comes to gun violence prevention. They come out against gun violence prevention, and folks on our side of the issue have not been showing up in nearly as large numbers. So I think that's part of the issue, that even though we are the majority, it's about 82% of Mainers who support common sense measures. But if 300 people show up at the State House with their ammo and their "Don't tread on me" signs, and 10 people show up who are promoting gun safety, those numbers don't give the legislators the feeling that they can safely vote for gun safety measures.
So what if we frame this? I mean, I think it always, the conversation generally, I would say, devolves into, are you pro-gun or anti-gun? Are you pro-Second Amendment or anti-Second Amendment? And I feel like you have both have made good strides in trying to reframe this issue to get to the people in the middle, right? The people not on either side, because I think actually most of the people who show up at the hearings are on one side or the other. But it's the people in the middle, in order to engage their hearts and minds and their support. Talk to me a little bit about reframing this, not about guns at all, but really about public safety and really about help for suicide victims. Like just reframing, like how do we keep our kids safe? Are there inroads there that we can make with people who might lean maybe towards the Second Amendment side? And I hate to say it because I don't think the Second Amendment, I don't mean it like that, but I just in shorthand. But does that provide an opportunity for us, Nicole?
Well, yes. And I mean, I think I can speak for myself personally, but I also think that this applies to many people within the movement. We're not anti-gun, we're anti-gun violence. And I think everybody in the society of their right mind, it should be anti-gun violence. And we should be able to coalesce behind the idea that, unnecessary deaths that are avoidable, we have to do everything that we can to avoid those deaths. So I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, I don't know, Cam, if you have anything to add.
Is there a safety, public health thing, Cam, there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think I think we're moving in that direction, but um, I think another issue, and I'm sort of sidestepping your question a little bit, but I think the Show Up network that Nicole has spearheaded is really important, because I think there are many people in Maine and everywhere don't actually need a nudge. They're already here. We don't need to reframe the argument. I think it's that the reason, for lack of a better word, Second Amendment or pro-gun folks have been showing up in such large numbers is they are all organized around rod and gun clubs, and they're all seeing each other in November when they head out on hunting trips. And our supporters are everywhere and spread out and not organized in social and cultural ways around this issue. We don't have annual events that organize us. So I think the importance of SUN is that it's stepping in and it's allowing this broad majority that already exists to share their voice with our legislators in Augusta. And we already see that in the 2 hearings we've had, where we have had 2-to-1, our supporters of gun safety versus our opponents, showing up to testify and speak out in favor of measures that will keep us all safe.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important point that you made, is that I often, self included, we spend a lot of time trying to convince the people that we're never going to convince. And so really it's just a matter of motivating and energizing the people who are already with us, people who are already supporting, as you said, the polls show, to actually take action. And it's such an interesting thing, that sort of fear of the NRA, when if we actually look at what's happening with the NRA right now, they're sort of in shambles, right? They've declared bankruptcy. They are giving way less money to candidates than the pro-gun safety movement at this point in time. So it makes it even more of a conundrum, and I think it speaks to the fear of that retribution, electoral retribution, that people feel that may not be a reality. And I think, as you said, I think Cam, or I don't know which one of you said it, but that now we see, like, maybe there's a shift. Or are we experiencing a shift in that there are legislators now who are running on this? And yes, even Biden talking about banning assault weapons, and Kamala Harris, talking about that at the presidential level. I felt like that was a shift, right?
I certainly think so. Hillary Clinton was the first candidate to run, high-level candidate to run on gun safety, but Biden is now there and he's speaking about it. I suppose Obama also spoke about it some in office, but that does feel like a difference. I think where we need to be careful is that federal Congress is not likely to pass bills. And so I don't want us at the state and local level to grow complacent because of his leadership. I think that we really need to keep moving forward and pass laws at the state level so that we do save lives.
Okay, great. So let's talk about some of those laws that I know you're working on. And I know, Nicole, you've already talked about testifying already, having hearings already, but tell me some of the top priorities that you have in terms of legislation coming up in Maine in this session.
I would say we had 3 top priorities, primary priorities that we'd like to talk about. So first of all, there's a background checks bill. We're calling it the Darien's Law. It's named after a young woman who was in a home invasion. She was the victim of a home invasion and of gun violence, and she ultimately died of that gunshot wound and the complications from it. The gun that killed her was purchased without a background check, which in the state of Maine is completely legal, in a private sale. And it was that weapon was used in another crime later and was recovered then. But because it was purchased without a background check, they don't know who purchased it. That kind of loophole is fairly common here in the state of Maine because we don't require background checks for all gun sales. This bill would make it so that if 2 strangers are meeting to exchange money for a gun, they must have a background check. It's not the same as the bill or the referendum that was on the ballot in 2016. It does not apply to hunting, does not apply to family members, doesn't apply to hunting buddies. It only applies to when 2 strangers meet to exchange money for a weapon.
Okay, so you took the loophole that they found, or the talking point that they found about Grandpa handing his rifle down to his hunting rifle down to his son, that was their big talking point against that referendum, and have fixed that. So it really is when there's a commercial exchange that there needs to be a background check. Okay, awesome.
Exactly.
And
yes.
has that bill had a hearing yet?
No, it hasn't had a hearing, and it doesn't have a date yet as of this filming. Perhaps by the time this is released, it will have a hearing.
We'll put it in the comments for sure. All right, awesome. All right, and what's a second one, Cam?
A second one would be it's a CAP law. It is a child access prevention law. So it will be built into a pre-existing child endangerment law and will clarify that law, sort of extend it to acknowledge the fact that guns need to be secured in a home to prevent unwanted accidental shootings by children and also teen suicides, which is the second leading cause of death for children in Maine ages 10 to 24.
Wow.
And so the way the bill works is it's a little bit like child safety seats. It recognizes that, well, I should step back to say there was a recent journal article that actually from the American Medical Association that said that 7% of children in the US live in a home where firearms are unsecured. And if we are able to encourage the adults in those homes to secure those guns, there will be 32% fewer gun deaths.
Wow.
And so what this law would do is it would say it encourages anyone who has unsecured firearms in their home and expects and knows that a child could access them, that if the child does access them and then fire them, discharge the weapon, they could face a penalty.
Okay. So it's that's such an interesting one for me and all of us as moms, like that conversation when your kids go for play dates, right? I mean, I know that you guys did some work on just giving people courage to say, just double checking, making sure, you don't have any unsecured firearms in your house or whatever. I mean, just, it's just, I know that for me, I did try and have those conversations, but it was often awkward. And it was often, and then when someone said, well, I don't know, like, when they said, I don't know, it's like, well, how about you guys come to our house, like trying to just, to do that. I think it seems like such a reasonable step to for the accidental in terms of, the accidents and certainly in terms of access to a suicide weapon.
And that feels particularly important to me right now, given the surge in gun purchases. And also, we see huge increases in mental illness, mental health crises for our kids just because of the weight of the pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. And it does, I think, for so many people, especially young people who don't have the life experience of like, we will get through this. It feels hard and hopeless. Yeah. Okay, Nicole, number 3.
Okay, so the third bill that we want to talk about has to do with cases of harassment. If someone is in a family relationship with an individual who is making threats, especially about using a gun to harm, then in that case, a judge can remove weapons from the defendant. But if there is not a family relationship, if they don't live in the same home and they're not romantically partnered, and the defendant makes the same threats, then a judge cannot remove weapons from that individual. And so that's just, it seems like it's an oversight in the law that needs to be fixed, because sometimes when people are unhinged, they can do really horrible things. So that's what that law is about. Did I describe it clearly?
How do you feel?
And I would just add to it that not only can they do horrible things, but there's a huge psychological burden on the victim of the harassment, and removing firearms from the person harassing them gives the victim a little bit more peace of mind. We did in the hearing for this bill hear from one individual who was themselves harassed and talked about constantly looking over their shoulder to see if they were safe. And you can imagine that if you knew that your harasser had a weapon, how much scarier that would feel.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay, so give me your well, first of all, so if people want to help and they want to be involved, what's the best way to get in touch with what's the best way to show up?
Well, you can become a part of the Show Up Network by going to maingunsafety.org/show up network.
With hyphens between the show and the up, or the show and the up and the up and the network.
Or you can just go to maingunsafety.org and click on the menu and you'll see the Show Up Network there.
Okay.
And then we will let you know when actions are necessary, called for, and those actions will probably be reaching out to members of the committees that these bills are going to be heard in, because that's the first hurdle that they have to get through, is being voted out of committee before they can even be voted on by the larger legislature.
Yeah. And how optimistic are you about these bills, Cam? Do you think there's a shot? Do you think, right, we all need to do it because we always move the ball forward. So I'm just curious what you're thinking.
Well, I'm hopeful. I am still looking to Governor Mills for leadership. I think that if she were to step forward and encourage legislators, many more would feel the bravery necessary to stand up and do what's right. Yeah. I think if she subtly undermines those bills, we are less likely to be successful. So I am hopeful. I am so proud of the work of the Show Up Network. I think Nicole has done an incredible job, because these hearings are starting to reflect common sentiment, and that's really powerful. So I'm hopeful in that regard. I'm hopeful because we have really good bills that will make a difference, and I'm cautiously optimistic about Governor Mills.
And you, Nicole?
There are days when I feel hopeful, and I love to hear Cam just describe her feelings. And there are days when it's hard because, it's, I've been in this movement for a long time, and progress is very slow and it's very difficult in coming. And as Cam says, we need to have legislators who have the courage to stand up for what's right. You're absolutely right, Cam. It starts with the governor. And if I could just add one other action, people could call the governor right now or write her a letter and tell them what you feel about this and how you want her to show up for the safety of your communities in terms of gun safety.
Yeah. So I think that go ahead.
And also op-eds.
Yeah. Letters to the editor, talking to your neighbors. The one thing that you two are perfect examples, shining examples of, is courage is contagious. And when people have the courage to stand up and to speak out and to be part of something that is for their own lives and for their own children, but also for the safety of all of us, that's contagious. People want to do the right thing ultimately, and we want to know that our communities are as safe as they can be. And I think that public health angle, looking at the suicide issue, looking at safety for kids, those are all just such common sense things that I know the vast majority of Mainers are right with us on that. So turning that thought and that hope into action is, I know, what you're both all about. And I am so incredibly grateful for your work and for showing up here today. And to all the Maine Challenge viewers out there who are watching, we encourage you to take our action challenge, and we will move this ball forward. And hopefully, the goal is to do it in times of peace, not after a tragedy. And so we can catch this wave of sort of new optimism and new hope, and actually make things happen that are going to really matter to you and your families and to all of us. So thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Cam, for being with us. And thank you to all of you for watching Maine Challenge. Thank you.